Chodesh Tov, everyone. Today is actually the second day of Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And I thought we'd do a very quick explanation of why Rosh Chodesh is sometimes celebrated as one day and sometimes 2 days. So it's a little bit technical, but it's interesting because it shows how closely we really do follow the lunar calendar, and it also illuminates a bit about what life was like before we had this standardized calendar that everybody could follow along in their homes like we do today. So each lunar cycle, or a month as we know it, is about 30 days, but actually it's exactly 29 and a half days, 29 days and 12 hours. So to deal with that in the Hebrew calendar, some months are 29 days and some months are 30 days, and some months every year fluctuate and have different amounts of days, just like in the regular Gregorian calendar. So long before we had this standardized calendar that every Jew could follow along with, we're talking several thousand years ago, the new month was determined by real live witnesses who would come to the Sanhedrin, which was the Supreme Court, the High Court in Israel, and they would report they had seen the new crescent moon. And so the new month had arrived and it was Rosh Chodesh. And 2 witnesses were required for this, and then some calculations would be done. And once it was determined, then the Sanhedrin would announce it was Rosh Chodesh. So the Sanhedrin would always gather on the 30th day of the Hebrew month. If the witnesses came and testified that they had seen the crescent moon the day before, it meant that the previous month was a 29-day month. So the current day, the 30th day, was actually already the second half of the first day of the new month, if that makes sense. And we celebrate 1 day of Rosh Chodesh. If they came and testified that they had seen the crescent moon today on the 30th day, that meant the new month had just started, right? We celebrate that day as Rosh Chodesh, but because the first day also continues into the next 12-hour period, we also celebrate the next day as Rosh Chodesh. That's 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. So another interesting question is, if nobody knew when the first day of the month was, not even the Sanhedrin, how did everyone else find out? What happened once the Sanhedrin would announce? So the Sanhedrin had a few different ways of notifying the people so that they could count the days of the month and celebrate the holidays on the correct day. In an earlier period, once the 2 witnesses had testified and the Sanhedrin had agreed that it was the new month, the Sanhedrin would then light signal fires on mountaintops to announce that Rosh Chodesh had started. So those fires acted as beacons throughout the rest of the country. As each town saw a beacon lit from the previous town, they would light their beacon, and so the next town would see it until everybody was notified. But the system obviously wasn't foolproof because anyone could light the fire. So when other communities started lighting the beacons at the wrong time to confuse the Jewish community and mess up their observance, the Sanhedrin decided to switch methods. So they switched to using runners, to messengers who would run from Jerusalem to the surrounding villages to announce Rosh Chodesh, and then those would set off messengers and so on until everybody in Israel knew. This system is actually also related to why holidays outside of Israel are celebrated with 2 days instead of 1 day. Sometimes it took so long for the messengers to reach the Jews who were living outside of Israel or on the outskirts of the Jewish community that those communities would have doubts about when holidays actually began. So the Jews in the diaspora began to observe 2 days, just in case the previous month had been a 29-day month and they had thought it was a 30-day month. They figured, let's just be extra cautious, we'll observe both days. And that's why in Israel, the beginning of a holiday is celebrated with 1 day, but outside of Israel, it's 2 days. So the Hebrew calendar wasn't actually really fixed until around the 4th century. According to our traditions, Hillel ben Yehuda, who was one of our sages, was responsible for instituting and formalizing our calendar as we know it today, which enabled Jews throughout the diaspora, throughout the whole world, to celebrate holidays exactly on the day that they're supposed to be celebrated. Why do we still celebrate 2 days outside of Israel? Tradition is very strong. Tradition. So that is our quick Rosh Chodesh teaching for today, for the month of Iyar. I wish all of you a Chodesh Tov, a wonderful, healthy, and sweet, happy month.